He turned his key at 12:15 on a Wednesday afternoon. The door opened before he touched it, unlocked, waiting. What he discovered at the top of those 14 stairs would cost him everything: his marriage, his certainty, half his fortune. But sometimes losing everything is the only way to learn what actually matters. This is that story. Welcome. I'm honored you're here. May this story remind you that presence is worth more than any achievement, and that sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what actually matters. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below with your location. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Now, let's begin where everything changed. At lunchtime on a Wednesday, with a key turning in a lock. His key turned in the lock at 12:15. The door swung open before he pushed it. Someone had left it unlatched. David stepped into the foyer. His shoes made no sound on the marble. The house held a quality of silence he couldn't name, not empty, but muffled. Waiting. His briefcase touched the console table. The lunch meeting had ended early. Traffic had been light. He'd texted her from the car, but the message still showed unread. He moved toward the kitchen. The air felt warmer than usual. The thermostat was programmed for 68 during the day. His palm registered heat before he reached the hallway. Voices came from upstairs, not loud, not arguing. A low murmur, then a laugh, brief, quickly cut off. His hand found the banister. The wood felt smooth, familiar under his fingers. He'd climbed these stairs thousands of times. His body knew the rhythm. 14 steps. A half turn at the landing. The voices stopped. He reached the second floor. The hallway stretched ahead, doors on both sides. Their bedroom door stood partially open, 6 inches of gap, enough to see the rumpled edge of white sheets. He stopped walking. A man's watch sat on the nightstand. Silver, not his. The face caught light from the window. David's hand stayed on the banister. His breathing hadn't changed. His heart beat normally. He stood there, looking at 6 inches of open door, at a watch that didn't belong to him. Someone coughed inside the room, a throat being cleared. Male. Then her voice. "Did you hear something?" Footsteps crossed the floor inside. Quick, but not panicked. Purposeful. David stepped back. His heel found the top stair without him looking. Muscle memory. His hand slid along the banister as he descended. 1 step. 2. The bedroom door opened wider. He heard it. The particular creak of their door, the sound he'd been meaning to oil for months. He kept walking down. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't reach for it. By the time he reached the foyer, he could hear movement upstairs. A door closing. Water running in the bathroom. His briefcase still sat on the console table. His keys lay beside it. The front door remained open, the way he'd left it. He picked up his keys. The engine started on the first turn. He backed out of the driveway at the same speed he always did. The garage door closed behind him automatically. He drove 3 blocks before he pulled over. His hands rested on the steering wheel. The leather felt warm from the sun. He looked at his phone. Her message had come through while he was driving. "Out running errands, home by 2. He set the phone in the cup holder. Face down. The office building's parking garage was mostly empty when he arrived. He took the elevator to the 42nd floor. His secretary looked up, surprised. "I thought you were taking the afternoon off." Change of plans. His office door closed with its usual solid click. The room smelled like leather and paper. The skyline filled the windows, buildings stacked against each other, glass and steel reflecting afternoon sun. He sat at his desk. Opened his laptop. The quarterly reports needed review by Friday. His phone stayed in his pocket. At 2:30, a text came through. "Where are you? your car's not here." He typed. "Office. Late meeting came up." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Appeared again. "Okay, want me to save dinner? Don't wait up. Might be late." K. He set the phone on the desk, looked at the spreadsheet on his screen. Numbers in neat columns, profit margins, growth projections, all of it clear, quantifiable. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Chen, your 4 o'clock is here." He'd forgotten. The acquisition meeting. Representatives from the pharmaceutical startup they'd been courting for 6 months. "Send them in." 3 men entered. Handshakes. Business cards exchanged. David gestured to the conference table by the window. They talked about patents, about market positioning, about the 18-month timeline to FDA approval. He listened, took notes, asked the right questions. His mind tracked revenue streams and regulatory hurdles with the same precision it always had. When they left at 5:45, the lead negotiator paused at the door. "We'll have our answer by Monday. I'll wait to hear from you." Alone again, David opened his phone. No new messages. He scrolled back through the last few weeks. Her texts formed a pattern he'd never noticed before. Short, frequent, always about logistics. Picking up dry cleaning. Lunch with Beth. Yoga ran long. Never anything substantial. Never anything that couldn't be verified or denied. He closed the messages, opened his contacts, found his attorney's number. His finger hovered over the call button. He locked the phone instead. The office grew darker. The skyline lit up. Thousands of windows glowing against the dusk. He should go home. He should confront this. He should do something other than sit here watching the city turn its lights on. His secretary knocked. "Mr. Chen, I'm heading out. Do you need anything?" "No, thank you." "You okay?" The question surprised him. He looked up. She'd worked for him for 12 years. She knew when something was off. "Long day," she nodded. Didn't push. "See you tomorrow." At 7, he drove home. The house glowed with warm light from every window. Her car sat in the driveway. He parked beside it, noting the distance. Close enough to seem normal, far enough to open his door without touching hers. Inside, the smell of cooking filled the air. Garlic, onions, something in the oven. Jessica stood at the stove, stirring something in a pan. She wore the blue dress he'd bought her last Christmas. Her hair was down, freshly washed, makeup carefully applied. She turned when she heard him. Smiled. "You're home." "I thought you'd be later. Meeting ended early. I made your favorite, chicken marsala." He set his briefcase down. "The same console table, the same spot. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to." She crossed to him, rose on her toes, kissed his cheek. Her perfume was different. Something new, something he didn't recognize. "Wine?" she asked. "Sure." She poured 2 glasses. Red, the expensive bottle he'd been saving. She handed him one, touched her glass to his. "What are we toasting?" "Us," she said. "Just us." He sipped. The wine tasted like it should. Rich, slightly bitter, warm going down. They ate at the dining room table. She'd set it properly. Placemats, cloth napkins, candles. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive. Meetings, paperwork. The acquisition going well. We'll know Monday." She nodded. Cut her chicken into small pieces. Ate slowly. Asked questions about work in that way she had. Interested but not probing. Supportive, but not demanding. Normal. Everything was normal. Except the watch. The watch he'd seen on the nightstand. The watch that was gone now, because he'd checked when he went upstairs to change clothes. The nightstand was empty except for her book and reading lamp. After dinner, she loaded the dishwasher. He dried the wine glasses by hand, the way he always did. Crystal needed care. "I'm tired," she said, closing the dishwasher door. "I think I'll go up early. I have some work to finish. I'll be up later." "Don't work too late." She kissed him again, the same spot on his cheek. Then she climbed the stairs, her hand trailing along the banister. David waited until he heard the bedroom door close. Then he went to his study, closed that door too, and sat in the dark. His phone lit up on the desk, a text from his attorney following up on an unrelated matter. He typed a response, then erased it, typed again, sent it this time. "Need to meet. Tomorrow if possible, personal matter." The response came within minutes. 9 a.m.? See you then. He set the phone down, looked at the bookshelves lining the walls. Law texts, business theory, biographies of men who'd built empires from nothing. He'd read them all, absorbed their strategies, applied their principles. None of them told you what to do when you came home at lunchtime and found evidence of something you couldn't undo. Upstairs, water ran in the bathroom. The familiar sounds of evening routine, toothbrush, faucet, cabinet door closing. He could go up there. He could ask. He could demand to know, but he'd seen the watch. He'd heard the voices, and she'd looked him in the eye over dinner and acted like it was just another Wednesday. The dishonesty felt worse than the betrayal. Or maybe they were the same thing. His attorney's office occupied the 39th floor of a building downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, the kind of space that announced expertise. Richard stood when David entered. "You sounded urgent on the phone. I need to know my options. Regarding? Divorce." Richard's expression didn't change. "Sit down." David sat, accepted the water bottle Richard offered, waited. "How long have you been married?" 11 years. "Children?" "No." "Assets?" "Complicated." Richard pulled out a legal pad, started writing. "Walk me through it." David listed it all. The investment portfolio, the real estate holdings, 3 properties in their name, 2 in his alone, the business, the trusts, the offshore accounts. Richard wrote without comment until David finished. "Prenup?" "No." Richard set his pen down. "That complicates things." "I know. California is a community property state. Everything acquired during the marriage gets split 50-50, unless you can prove it's separate property. Most of it came from the business, growth during the marriage, which makes it community property." Richard leaned back. "Even if you started the company before the marriage, any appreciation in value during the marriage is likely community property." David absorbed this. He'd built the company from 6 employees to 300, from $2 million in annual revenue to $40 million. And half of that growth belonged to her. What about infidelity? California's a no-fault state. Doesn't matter why you're divorcing, only that you are. So she cheats and she still gets half. That's the law. David stood, walked to the window. Downtown traffic moved below, tiny cars following predetermined routes. There has to be something. There might be. If she signed anything. Documents related to the business, financial agreements, anything that could establish separate property rights. If she misused community funds, if there's evidence of financial misconduct, she has full access to our accounts. That's not uncommon. But if she's been moving money, making unusual purchases, anything that could establish she's already preparing for divorce, that could be useful. David turned. How do I find that out? Carefully. Very carefully. Richard stood, crossed to his desk, pulled out a business card. This investigator specializes in financial forensics. Discreet, thorough. She can tell you what's there without leaving a trail. David took the card. Sarah Chen. No relation, despite the shared last name. He pocketed it. "One more thing," Richard said. "Don't do anything rash. Don't confront her yet. Don't change your behavior. You need documentation before you move." "How long?" "Depends what we find. Weeks. Maybe months." David nodded, left the building, sat in his car in the parking garage and called the number on the card. Sarah Chen's voice was professional, neutral. "I can start Monday. Initial retainer is $15,000. "That's fine. I'll need access to bank statements, credit card records, anything she has access to. Can you provide that without her knowing?" "I can. Then we'll start there." The weekend passed in careful normalcy. Jessica went to yoga Saturday morning, came back with groceries. They ate lunch on the patio, talked about nothing important. Saturday night they watched a movie. Her choice, something romantic he didn't follow. Sunday she spent gardening while he worked in his study. They moved around each other with practiced ease, their paths crossing in the kitchen, the hallway, never quite touching. Monday morning, Sarah Chen called. "I've reviewed the preliminaries. There's something you should know." "Go ahead." "In the last 6 months, there's been regular cash withdrawals, same amount, same frequency, every Wednesday." David's hand tightened on the phone. "How much?" $500. "Cash withdrawals from the ATM near your house." "That's chump change." "It's a pattern. And there's something else. Hotel charges. Different hotels, but always Wednesday afternoons. The Fairmont. The Ritz. The Peninsula." "She told me she was running errands." "I'm sure she was. Just not the kind you assumed." David sat down. His study suddenly felt smaller, the walls too close. "Can you prove it's her?" "The charges are on your joint card, but I can do more. Surveillance, photos, timestamps, whatever you need." "Do it. It'll increase the retainer." "I don't care. I want evidence." He hung up, stared at his computer screen without seeing it. $500 every Wednesday, 6 months of Wednesdays, 26 weeks. He'd been at work every Wednesday afternoon, never suspected, never thought to question. Jessica appeared in the doorway. "Coffee?" He turned. She wore yoga pants and a loose shirt, hair in a ponytail. No makeup. She looked young, familiar, like the woman he'd married. "Thanks." She set the mug on his desk, leaned against the doorframe. "You've been distant. Work stress? The acquisition?" "Among other things." She nodded, studied him. "We should talk." "About what?" "About us. About what's been happening." His pulse jumped. "What's been happening?" "You're never home. Even when you're here, you're not present. We haven't had dinner together in weeks." "We had dinner Wednesday." One dinner. After months of nothing. She wasn't wrong. He'd spent the last year building the company, traveling, closing deals. He'd taken her for granted, assumed she'd always be there. But that didn't excuse Wednesday. "I'll try to be home more," he said. "That's not what I'm asking for." "Then what?" "I don't know anymore." She pushed off the door frame. "I'm going out. I'll be back later." "Where?" "Does it matter?" She left before he could answer. He heard the front door close, her car starting, the sound fading as she drove away. His phone rang. Sarah Chen. She just left. We're on her. 2 hours later, photos arrived via encrypted email. Jessica's car at the Ritz. Jessica entering the lobby. Jessica in the elevator with a man David didn't recognize. Tall. Dark hair. Expensive suit. The timestamps showed they'd entered the elevator at 2:43. The surveillance log showed they'd left at 5:15. "Do we know who he is?" David asked, still working on it. "But I can tell you this. He's there every Wednesday. Same hotel. Same time window." David closed the email, opened it again. stared at the photo of his wife standing next to a stranger in an elevator, her hand resting casually on his arm. The evidence was clear, irrefutable, exactly what he'd asked for. He picked up his phone, called Richard. "I have what I need." "Good. Bring everything to my office. We'll file this week." "What happens after that?" "She gets served. You move out or she does, and then we negotiate." "How long?" 6 months minimum, maybe longer if she fights. "She'll fight." Most do. David hung up, looked around his study, books he'd collected over 20 years, furniture he'd chosen carefully, a space that was entirely his, all of it about to be divided, cataloged, assigned monetary value. He drove to Richard's office, handed over the financial records, the photos, everything Sarah had compiled. Richard spread it across his conference table like pieces of a puzzle. "This is solid. The pattern alone would raise questions, but with photos and financial records, she has no defense. When do we file?" "Thursday, Friday at the latest." "And then?" "Then you wait for her response. In the meantime, don't leave the house unless she does. Don't close any accounts. Don't move any assets. We want to maintain the status quo until the court establishes temporary orders." David nodded, stood, shook Richard's hand. At home, Jessica was in the kitchen. Dinner prep, vegetables on the cutting board, chicken defrosting in the sink. "You're back," she said. "I am." "Are you hungry?" "Not really." She set the knife down, turned to face him fully. "David, we need to talk. You said that earlier, and you didn't listen." She wiped her hands on a towel. "I've been thinking about us, about where we are." "Where are we?" "I don't know. That's the problem." She moved to the dining room, sat at the table. He followed, sat across from her. "I know I haven't been the husband you wanted," he said. "That's not—" She stopped, started again. "You're a good husband. You provide. You're stable. You're kind in your way. But I'm lonely. I've been lonely for a long time." The word landed like a stone. Lonely. Simple. True. "I've been building something," he said. "The company. Our future. I know. And I'm proud of you. But somewhere along the way, you started building it alone. You could have said something. I tried. You were always too busy. Too focused. Too tired. So you found someone else." The silence stretched. Her face showed surprise, then something else. Not guilt. Resignation. "How long have you known?" "Does it matter?" "Yes. Since last week. I came home for lunch, early." She closed her eyes, opened them. "I'm sorry you saw that. You're sorry I saw it. Not sorry you did it. I didn't want to hurt you." "Then why?" "Because I was disappearing. Bit by bit. Day by day. You didn't notice, but I did. And I couldn't stand it anymore." David leaned back. The chair creaked softly. Outside, neighbors were arriving home from work. Car doors closing. Garage doors opening. Normal life continuing around them. "Who is he? Does it matter?" "Yes. His name is Thomas. He's an architect. I met him at a gallery opening 6 months ago." "Every Wednesday?" "Yes. For how long?" "Does the timeline change anything?" "It might. 4 months. 4 months. 16 Wednesdays. 80 afternoons spent at hotels with another man." "Are you in love with him?" She looked at her hands. "I don't know. Maybe. It feels different with him. He sees me. He asks questions. He listens when I answer. I listen." "Do you?" "When's the last time you asked me about my day and actually heard the answer?" He couldn't remember. Weeks, maybe months. Their conversations had become transactional, logistics, schedules, maintenance of their shared life. "I've filed for divorce," he said. Her head came up. "When?" "This week." You'll be served Friday. That's fast. I have evidence, photos, financial records. It's all documented. So that's it. You're just done. You were done first. I was trying to survive by cheating, by finding someone who made me feel alive again. They sat in silence. The kitchen timer beeped. She didn't move to turn it off. It beeped again, again. Finally, David stood, walked to the kitchen, shut off the timer, turned off the oven. When he came back, she was crying, quiet tears, the kind that fell without sound. I never wanted this, she said. Neither did I. What happens now? You get served. We divide assets. We move on. Just like that. Just like that. She wiped her eyes, stood. I'll go pack some things. You don't have to leave tonight. Yes, I do. She climbed the stairs. He heard her moving in the bedroom, opening drawers, closing closet doors. The sounds of departure. 20 minutes later, she came down with a suitcase, her car keys in hand. I'll come back for the rest later. Take your time. She paused at the door, looked back at him. I really am sorry about all of it. So am I. The door closed. Her car started, backed out of the driveway. He stood in the foyer in the same spot where he'd stood 7 days ago, coming home to find his life irrevocably changed. The house was silent now, truly empty. His phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Papers will be ready tomorrow. We file Thursday morning. David walked to his study, sat at his desk, opened his laptop. The work was still there. The quarterly reports, the acquisition deal, the endless stream of decisions that needed making. He closed the laptop, turned off the desk lamp, sat in the dark. Tomorrow, he'd be fine. He'd go to the office. He'd sign the divorce papers. He'd move forward with the methodical precision that had built his company from nothing. But tonight, he let himself sit in the silence of an empty house and feel the weight of what he'd lost. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Jessica didn't fight the evidence. The photos alone made defense impossible. They met once to discuss terms. A conference room downtown, lawyers on both sides of the table. Jessica wore a gray dress and no jewelry. She looked tired. The assets were divided exactly as California law demanded. 50-50. The house would be sold. The investment portfolio split. Even his business, the company he'd built before they married, would be valued at its current worth, and she'd receive half the appreciation that had occurred during their marriage. She signed the papers without argument. Her attorney had advised her well. Fighting would only increase costs, delay the inevitable. There's one thing, she said when the financial terms were settled. What? The photographs, the surveillance records. I want them destroyed. They're part of the case file. I don't care. I want them gone. Richard looked at David. We can stipulate that as part of the agreement. Once the divorce is final, all surveillance materials are destroyed. Fine, David said. Jessica nodded, signed the final page, stood, left the room without looking at him. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. All terms executed, all assets divided. The house sold to a young couple with 2 children. David moved to a condo downtown, 10th floor, city views. Empty rooms he filled gradually with new furniture. Jessica moved across town. He didn't ask where, didn't want to know. The company grew. The acquisition went through. Revenue doubled within 18 months. David hired new staff, opened a second office, negotiated partnerships with companies across 3 states. Work filled his days. He arrived early, left late, brought projects home on weekends. The routine was familiar, comfortable, productive. His secretary noticed first. Mr. Chen, You're running yourself into the ground. I'm fine. You're here 12 hours a day, sometimes more. The business requires it. The business was here before you started staying late every night. He looked up from his computer. Is there a point to this conversation? She hesitated. Then, you're doing the same thing you did before. Before what? Before your divorce. The words hung in the air between them. True, undeniable. Thank you for your concern, he said. But I'm fine. She left. He returned to work, but the observation stayed with him, working late, skipping lunches, filling every hour with something productive, something measurable, something that couldn't betray him. He'd buried himself in work during his marriage, and it had cost him everything. Now he was doing it again, but this time there was nothing to lose. No wife at home wondering where he was. No relationship slowly dying from neglect. Just him and the company and the endless march of progress. 6 months after the divorce finalized, he ran into her at a coffee shop. He was picking up an afternoon espresso. She was at a table by the window, laptop open, papers spread around her. She looked different. Her hair was shorter. She wore clothes he didn't recognize. She looked focused, purposeful. Their eyes met. He expected awkwardness, anger, something heavy. Instead, she smiled, small, uncertain, but genuine. He walked to her table. Hi, he said. Hi, you look good. Thanks, so do you. Are you, he gestured at the papers, working? Interior design. I went back to school, got my certification. That's great. Yeah, it's good. I'm good. She paused. Are you good? I'm fine. Still at the office 12 hours a day. He smiled despite himself. 13, actually. David, I know. You're doing it again. There's nothing else to do. There's everything else to do. He looked at her papers, her laptop, the half-finished coffee beside her notes. She'd rebuilt. Found something of her own, moved forward. I'm happy for you, he said. Really. I'm happy too. Finally, she closed her laptop. For what it's worth, I am sorry about how it ended. I know, but I'm not sorry it ended. I know that too. Do you ever think about what went wrong? Sometimes. Me too. And I think, she stopped, started again. I think we both chose different things. You chose work. I chose survival. And somewhere in there, we stopped choosing each other. Probably. For what it's worth, I think you're brilliant at what you do. The company, the success, all of it. You built something real. Just not a marriage? No, not that. They stood in silence. Around them, the coffee shop buzzed with afternoon energy. People working, reading, meeting friends, life continuing in all its ordinary chaos. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. He left, drove back to the office, sat at his desk and looked at the skyline. She was right. He'd built something real. His company thrived. His business reputation was solid. Financially, he'd recovered from the divorce settlement and then some. But he came home to an empty condo every night. Microwaved dinners, emails answered from his couch, sleep that came late and reluctantly. He was doing the same thing he'd done before, expecting different results. His phone rang. His secretary. Mr. Chen, the team wants to know if you're joining them for drinks. It's Friday. Friday. He'd forgotten. Tell them I'll be down in 10 minutes. Really? Really? He closed his laptop, locked his office, took the elevator down to the lobby. The team had gathered at a bar 2 blocks away. Young associates, senior staff, even a few clients who'd become friends. They made room for him at the table, ordered him a drink, pulled him into conversation about everything except work. He stayed for 2 hours, laughed at stories, shared a few of his own, left when the group was still going strong. On the way home, he passed the coffee shop. Jessica wasn't there anymore. Her table was occupied by teenagers doing homework, but he thought about what she'd said, about choosing, about what mattered. He couldn't undo the past, couldn't change what had happened, but he could change what happened next. Monday morning, he arrived at the office at 8:30 instead of 7. He took lunch at an actual restaurant instead of eating at his desk. He left at 6, went to the gym, made dinner in his own kitchen. Small changes, incremental, nothing dramatic. But they added up. Within a few weeks, his secretary stopped commenting on his hours. The associates stopped looking surprised when he joined them for after-work gatherings. Life developed a rhythm that wasn't just work, sleep, repeat. He wasn't happy, not yet, but he wasn't hollow anymore either. One evening, sitting in his condo with a book instead of a laptop, he realized something. Jessica had been right about everything. He'd built an empire and lost a marriage. He'd worked himself into isolation. He'd measured success in revenue and growth and forgotten to measure it in anything that actually mattered. But understanding it didn't fix it. Acknowledging the pattern didn't break it. What broke it was choosing every single day to do something different, to come home at a reasonable hour, to call friends, to read books that had nothing to do with business, to remember that life existed outside the office walls. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a transformation. It was just a man learning, slowly and painfully, that success meant nothing if you achieved it alone. The company continued to grow. David continued to lead it, but the work no longer consumed him. It was part of his life, not the entirety of it. He started dating eventually. Nothing serious, just coffee, dinner, conversations with women who had their own careers, their own interests, their own lives that didn't revolve around him. It felt strange at first, awkward. He'd forgotten how to be present with another person, how to listen instead of just waiting to speak, but he learned. Slowly, with effort. A year after the divorce, he saw Jessica again. At a charity gala downtown, she was there with someone. The architect, he assumed. Thomas. They looked comfortable together. Easy. She saw him across the room, waved. He waved back. They didn't approach each other, didn't need to. The acknowledgement was enough. She'd moved on. So had he. Different directions, different lives. He left the gala early, drove home. His condo felt less empty now. He'd added art to the walls, plants by the windows, books on the shelves, small signs of a life being lived. He made tea, sat by the window, watched the city lights. His phone buzzed. A text from the woman he'd been seeing. Nothing serious yet, but maybe getting there. How was the gala? Fine, left early. Want company? He looked around the condo. At the space he'd built for himself, the quiet he'd fought for. Tomorrow night instead, I'd like to cook dinner. You cook? I'm learning. I'd like that. He set the phone down. Smiled. It wasn't the life he'd planned, not the future he'd imagined when he'd married Jessica 11 years ago, but it was honest, real, present, and maybe that was enough. The tea cooled in his hands. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. Inside, David sat in stillness and felt, for the first time in a long time, like he was exactly where he needed to be. 2 years after the divorce, David received an invitation to Jessica's wedding. He stared at the envelope for a long moment before opening it. Heavy cardstock, elegant script, her name and Thomas's printed in gold foil. The wedding was in 3 months. A garden venue outside the city. Romantic, intimate. He called her. You sent me an invitation. I did. Why? Because I want you to be there. Because despite everything, you were important to me. Still are, in a way. Jessica, You don't have to come. I understand if you don't want to, but I wanted you to know you're welcome. He looked at the invitation, at the date circled in his mind. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. He hung up, set the invitation on his kitchen counter, left it there for days, walking past it, seeing it, not deciding. Finally, he picked it up again, read every word, the venue, the time, the request for RSVP. He filled out the response card, checked accepts with pleasure, mailed it back. The wedding was beautiful. Jessica looked radiant in a simple white dress, her hand in Thomas's, her smile genuine and bright. David sat near the back, watched the ceremony, felt nothing but quiet happiness for her. At the reception, they spoke briefly. You came, she said. I did. Thank you. You look happy. I am. Really happy. She glanced at Thomas, standing a few feet away, talking to guests. He's good for me. I can see that. Are you? She hesitated. Are you happy? Getting there. Good. You deserve that. So do you. They stood in comfortable silence. Years of shared history between them, no longer weighted with pain. I should get back, she said, but I'm glad you came. Me too. He left before the dancing started, drove home through sunset-lit streets. His condo welcomed him with familiar warmth, lights on timers, plants thriving by the windows, the smell of coffee from the morning still lingering. He'd cooked dinner that morning, meal prep for the week, a routine he'd developed, small steps toward a life that felt full instead of empty. His phone rang. The woman he'd been seeing. Sarah, different Sarah, not the investigator, an emergency room doctor, sharp, funny, perpetually exhausted from night shifts. How was the wedding? Good. Strange, but good. Want to talk about it? Not really. Fair enough. I'm off tomorrow. Want to do brunch? Yeah, I'd like that. Pick me up at 10? See you then. He made tea, sat by the window. The city glowed in the darkness. Somewhere across town, Jessica was dancing at her wedding, building a new life, moving forward. He was moving forward too. Different direction, different pace, but forward nonetheless. The work was still there. The company still demanded his attention, but it no longer consumed him. He had other things now, routines, relationships, hobbies that had nothing to do with profit margins. He'd learned the hard way what happened when you built a life around only one thing, when you measured worth only in achievement, when you forgot that success meant nothing if you faced it alone. The lesson had cost him a marriage, nearly cost him himself, but he'd learned it, finally, completely. And now, sitting in his own space, planning brunch with someone who made him laugh, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a life being lived with intention, now he understood what he'd been missing. Not perfection, not some grand transformation, just presence, connection. The simple act of being here, now, fully engaged with whatever came next. The tea cooled, the city lights blurred. David closed his eyes. Tomorrow, brunch. Next week, quarterly reviews. Next month, who knew? But tonight, this moment, he was exactly where he needed to be, and that was enough. 3 years after the divorce, David met someone who changed everything. Not in a dramatic way, not with grand gestures or life-altering revelations. Her name was Rachel. She was a photographer specializing in architectural work. They met when his company commissioned her for promotional materials, clean shots of their newest office space, modern lines against natural light. She showed up with a battered camera bag and an easy confidence. Spent 3 hours capturing angles he'd never noticed, finding beauty in spaces he walked through every day without seeing. At the end of the shoot, she handed him a card. If you need anything else, give me a call. He did. Not for work, for coffee. They talked for 2 hours, about photography, about business, about the city and its strange rhythm. She'd traveled extensively, Europe, Asia, South America, but always came back to this place, these streets, this particular quality of light. "Why here?" he asked. "Because it's home. And because I learned that running to new places doesn't fix anything if you don't fix yourself first." The honesty struck him. No pretense, no performance, just truth offered casually over coffee. They started seeing each other regularly. Not dates exactly, just time spent together. Gallery openings she was documenting, business dinners where he needed a +1. Gradually, naturally, until one day he realized she was the person he called first when something happened, good or bad. 6 months in, she met his team at a company event, fit seamlessly into conversations, made everyone laugh, listened more than she talked. Afterward, his secretary pulled him aside. "She's good for you." "Yeah? Yeah, you're different when she's around. Present. I'm always present." "No, you're always here. That's different." He thought about that. The distinction between being physically present and actually being there, engaged, connected. Rachel made him want to be there, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, just because being with her felt better than being anywhere else. A year in, she moved into his condo, brought her equipment, her books, her plants that required specific watering schedules. The space transformed, more lived in, more colorful, more real. "It was pretty sterile before," she said, arranging prints on the walls. "Minimalist." "Lonely." That too. They built routines together. Morning coffee on the balcony, evenings cooking dinner, trading stories from their days, weekends exploring the city, finding corners they'd never noticed before. She pushed him to take time off, real time. Not working remotely from a hotel, but actually unplugging. They went to Japan for 2 weeks, walked through temples, ate at tiny restaurants, sat in gardens and watched koi swim in ancient ponds. He didn't check email, didn't take calls, let the world continue without him. And it did. The company ran fine. His team handled problems. The business didn't collapse because he stepped away. "See," Rachel said, watching cherry blossoms fall in the garden. "The world doesn't need you as much as you think it does." That's humbling. That's freedom. She was right. Again. 2 years in, they got married. Small ceremony, close friends, family, no big production. Just vows spoken honestly, promises made seriously. Jessica sent a card. Congratulations. Best wishes. Genuinely meant. David sent a thank you note. Meant it too. Life continued. The company continued to grow. David continued to lead it. But the work had proportion now. Context. It was important, but not everything. Rachel's career flourished. Her architectural photography gained recognition. She booked exhibitions, published books, traveled for major commissions. Sometimes he went with her. Sometimes she went alone. They had their own lives, their own work. But they came back to each other. Every time. One evening, 5 years after meeting Rachel, David stood on their balcony watching the city lights. She joined him, handed him wine. "What are you thinking about? How different this is from before. Different good? Different better. You worked hard for this. We both did." She leaned against his shoulder. They stood in comfortable silence. Below, the city moved. People heading home, heading out, living their lives with all the messy complexity that entailed. David thought about the man he'd been, the one who came home at lunchtime and found everything changed, the one who built an empire and lost a marriage, the one who measured worth in revenue and forgot to measure it in anything else. That man had learned painfully what mattered. This man, the one standing here now, knew it, lived it, built his days around it. Work was still important, Success still mattered, but they were part of a larger whole, not the entirety of existence. Rachel squeezed his hand. "Come inside. Dinner's ready." He followed her in. The condo smelled like garlic and herbs. Music played softly from the kitchen. Their life, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. He'd lost everything once, rebuilt from scratch, learned what he needed to learn, and now he had this moment, this evening, this woman, this life. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was real, present, true, and that finally was enough. Years later, David received news that Jessica had a baby, a daughter. The announcement came through mutual friends, accompanied by a photo of a tiny face wrapped in soft blankets. He showed Rachel. "She looks happy," Rachel said. "She does. Are you okay?" He looked at the photo, Jessica beaming at the camera, Thomas beside her, their daughter between them, a family, complete. "Yeah, I'm okay." And he was. No pang of regret, no wondering about what might have been, just genuine happiness for someone who'd found what they needed. He sent a gift, something practical but thoughtful. Received a thank you note weeks later, Jessica's handwriting slightly shaky. "New parent exhaustion. Your kindness means more than you know. Thank you for everything. For understanding. For letting go. For moving forward. I hope you're happy. You deserve it." He tucked the note in a drawer. A piece of history. Something that mattered once and still did, just differently. Rachel found it weeks later, cleaning. "Is this from her?" "Yeah." "Do you mind that I read it?" "No." She read it slowly. Set it down carefully. "She's right. You do deserve happiness. So do you. I know, and I have it." She kissed him. Returned to cleaning. Life continued in its ordinary way. David went to his study, opened his laptop. The company needed attention, always did, but the work felt different now. Important, but not consuming. A part of his life, not the entirety. He worked for 2 hours, then closed the laptop, found Rachel in the garden, planting new flowers. "Need help?" Always. He knelt beside her, dirt under his fingernails, sun warm on his back, the simple work of making things grow. Later, they'd make dinner together, talk about their days, make plans for the weekend, the ordinary rhythm of a life shared. It wasn't the life he'd imagined at 30, not the future he'd planned when he first built his company, first got married, first measured success in numbers and growth. But it was the life he'd chosen, built deliberately, with intention, with someone who saw him clearly and loved what she saw. The mistake still hurt sometimes. The memory of coming home that Wednesday afternoon, seeing the watch on the nightstand, hearing voices upstairs, the end of one version of himself, but that ending had led here, to this garden, this woman, this moment of dirt under his nails and sun on his back and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. He'd been broken once, rebuilt himself, learned what mattered, and now he knew, not theoretically, not abstractly, but deeply, certainly, in a way that informed every decision. Success wasn't revenue, wasn't growth, wasn't empire building. Success was this: being here, being present, being connected to another person and to the life you were actively creating. He looked at Rachel, focused on her planting, dirt smudged on her cheek. She glanced up, caught him watching, smiled. "What?" "Nothing. Just thinking." About how lucky I am." "Damn right you are." She threw a clod of dirt at him, laughing. Light. He threw one back. They ended up wrestling in the garden, laughing like teenagers covered in dirt and happiness. Later, showered and clean, they sat on the balcony with wine. The city stretched below. lights coming on as darkness fell. Millions of lives being lived, millions of stories unfolding. His was just one. Not special, not unique, but it was his, and it was good, and it was enough. Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Simple words, profound truth. The evening deepened, stars appeared, fighting the city light. Cool breeze came off the bay. They sat in silence, together, present. And in that moment, David Chen, successful businessman, divorced man, someone who'd learned painful lessons and applied them, felt complete. Not because he'd achieved something, not because he'd built something, not because he'd won something, but because he was here, fully here, with nothing held back, nothing hidden, nothing sacrificed for some future that might never come. Just now, just this, just real life, being lived with intention and presence and love. And that was everything. The last time David saw Jessica was 5 years after her wedding. A chance encounter at a farmer's market. He was with Rachel, picking out vegetables for dinner. Jessica was with Thomas and their daughter, who was now 5 years old, running between stalls. They saw each other across the crowd, recognized each other instantly, despite the years. Jessica approached first. "David." "Jessica." Rachel stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Rachel." "Jessica. Nice to finally meet you." Thomas joined them, their daughter on his shoulders. Introductions all around. The kind of polite, slightly awkward conversation that happens between people with complicated history. But it wasn't uncomfortable. Not really. Just people acknowledging their past while firmly rooted in their present. "Your daughter is beautiful," Rachel said. "Thank you. She's a handful." "She looks happy." "She is." "We all are." Jessica looked at David. "You look good, really good." "So do you. I heard your company went public. Congratulations." "Thank you. It's been a journey. I'm proud of you. For what you've built, and for," she glanced at Rachel, "for what you've found." "Same to you." Thomas shifted their daughter on his shoulders. "We should get going." "Nap time." "Of course." Jessica smiled at David and Rachel. "It was good to see you both." "You too," David said. They parted ways. David and Rachel continued shopping. But later, in the car heading home, Rachel spoke. "That wasn't as weird as I expected." "No? No. You both seemed at peace." "We are." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd fought harder? For the marriage?" "Sometimes. But not in a way that hurts anymore. Just curiosity. And I think we both ended up where we needed to be." Rachel nodded. "I'm glad you think so. Because I'm very glad you ended up here. With you. With me." He reached over, took her hand. They drove home through afternoon traffic, planning their evening, their weekend, their life. Behind them, Jessica and Thomas were doing the same. Different car, different plans, different life, but both happy, both at peace. Both proof that sometimes things end not because they were wrong, but because they were complete. Done. Ready for the next chapter. David understood that now. Deeply. Completely. The man who'd come home at lunchtime all those years ago had thought his life was ending, and in a way, it was. That version of his life, that marriage, that understanding of what mattered. But it was also beginning. The next phase, the harder lessons, the deeper understanding. And now, finally, he'd arrived. Not at some destination, not at some final achievement, but at a place of acceptance, of presence, of genuine happiness that wasn't dependent on external measures of success. He pulled into their building's garage, parked, turned off the car. Rachel gathered the vegetables. "You okay?" Yeah, I'm good. Sure? Completely. And he was. They rode the elevator up, unlocked their door. The condo welcomed them, lived in, comfortable, theirs. Rachel started dinner prep. David opened wine. Music played softly. The evening unfolded in its familiar rhythm. Later, after dinner, after cleanup, after everything that made up their daily life, they sat on the balcony. The city glowed. The bay reflected lights. The world continued its endless motion. David thought about time, how it moved forward relentlessly, how you couldn't go back, couldn't undo, couldn't change what had already happened. But you could learn, could grow, could become someone better than who you'd been. He'd been someone who came home and found betrayal, who worked himself into isolation, who measured worth in all the wrong ways. Now he was someone different, someone who understood balance, connection, presence. The change hadn't been dramatic, no single moment of transformation, just daily choices accumulated over time until one day you looked up and realized you'd become someone new. Rachel's hand found his. You're thinking too much. How can you tell? You get this look, serious, internal. Sorry, don't be. Just don't get lost in there. I won't. She leaned against him. Tell me something good. Like what? Anything. Something that made you happy today. He thought about it, seeing Jessica, and realizing it didn't hurt at all. That is good. And this, right now, being here with you. That's the best part. Yeah, it is. They sat in silence, the kind of comfortable silence that only comes from real intimacy, real understanding. David thought about the younger version of himself, the one who'd built a company but forgot to build a life, who'd had a marriage but wasn't really present in it, who'd measured everything in metrics that meant nothing. If he could talk to that version of himself, what would he say? Probably nothing that would have made a difference. Some lessons you had to learn through experience, through loss, through the painful process of breaking down and rebuilding. But maybe he'd say, pay attention, be here. Don't sacrifice the real for the theoretical. Don't trade presence for achievement. Don't work so hard to build the future that you miss the present. Simple lessons, obvious even, but hard to learn, harder to live. He'd learned them, finally, completely. And now he had this evening, this woman, this life. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Rachel stirred. I'm getting cold. Want to head inside? Yeah. They stood, gathered their wine glasses, headed inside to warmth and light and the comfortable conclusion of another ordinary, extraordinary day. Behind them, the city continued. Lights burning. Lives unfolding. Stories being written. His was just one among millions. Not more important. Not more meaningful, but it was his, and he was present in it, fully, completely, and that made all the difference. David closed the balcony door, locked it, drew the curtains. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to choose presence over absence, connection over isolation, real life over theoretical achievement. But tomorrow was tomorrow. Tonight was now, and now was perfect. 10 years after the divorce, David received a text from an unknown number. This is Thomas, Jessica's husband. She asked me to reach out. She's been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Not much time left. She'd like to see you, if you're willing. David stared at the message, read it 3 times, felt the words settle into understanding. He showed Rachel. Are you going to go? I think I should. Then I'll come with you. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. They drove to the hospital 2 days later. Jessica's room was on the 4th floor. Private. Quiet. Flowers everywhere, from friends, family, colleagues. She looked small in the hospital bed. Thin. Her skin had that translucent quality illness brings, but her eyes were clear when she saw him. "You came." "Of course," he introduced Rachel. Jessica smiled. "I've heard about you. All good things." "I've heard about you too," Rachel said. "Also all good things." Jessica laughed, then coughed. Thomas appeared with water. She sipped carefully. "Can you give us a few minutes?" Jessica asked Thomas. He looked at David. David nodded. Thomas left with Rachel. The door closed softly. Jessica patted the bed. "Sit." David sat, carefully. The room smelled like antiseptic and flowers. Medical equipment beeped softly. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, but clear-headed. They're managing the pain well." "That's good." "David, I asked you here because I wanted to say something, before it's too late." "You don't have to." "I do. Please let me." He nodded. Waited. "I was wrong. About a lot of things. But specifically, I was wrong about why our marriage ended." "Jessica, for years I told myself it was because you worked too much, because you weren't present, because you prioritized the company over us. And that was true. But it wasn't the whole truth." She paused, took another sip of water. "The whole truth is that I stopped fighting for us long before I started the affair. I let myself become invisible. I stopped asking for what I needed. I just accepted the situation and then resented you for it. We both made mistakes." "Yes, but I want you to know I understand mine. It wasn't just you. It was both of us, failing in different ways." David felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Thank you for saying that. I also want you to know that seeing you today, seeing you with Rachel, I'm so happy for you. You found what we couldn't give each other. You found that too. With Thomas." "I did. He's been wonderful. Through all of this." Her eyes filled. "I hate that I'm leaving him. That I'm leaving my daughter. She's only 10. She won't remember me well. She'll remember you. Thomas will make sure of it." "I hope so." They sat in silence. Outside, hospital sounds continued. Beeping. Footsteps. Muffled conversations. "Do you believe in forgiveness?" Jessica asked. "Yes." "Do you forgive me?" "I forgave you years ago." "Even for the affair?" "Even for that. We were both drowning in different ways. You found a life raft. I can't blame you for taking it." She cried then, quietly. He handed her tissues, sat with her while she composed herself. "I don't want to die," she said. "I'm not ready." "I know. I'm scared." "I know. But I'm also grateful. For the life I had. For Thomas. For my daughter. Even for you. For what we were. Even though it didn't last. Me too." She squeezed his hand. "Be happy, David. Keep being happy. Don't let work consume you again. Don't lose what you have. I won't. Promise me." "I promise." She released his hand, leaned back against the pillows. Exhausted. "I should let you rest. Thank you for coming. Thank you for asking." He stood, moved toward the door, paused. "Jessica?" "Yeah? I forgive you, but also, I'm sorry, for my part in how we ended, for not being present, for choosing work over you. I'm sorry." She smiled, tired but genuine. "I forgive you too." He left, found Rachel and Thomas in the waiting area. Rachel stood immediately. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." Thomas approached. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot to her." "I'm glad I did. She doesn't have much time. Weeks, maybe days." "I'm sorry." "Me too." Thomas's composure cracked slightly. "I don't know how to do this without her." Rachel stepped forward, put a hand on his arm. "You'll find a way. For your daughter, you'll find a way." Thomas nodded, couldn't speak. They left, drove home in silence. Rachel's hand in his the whole way. Jessica died 6 days later. Thomas called with the news. The funeral was small. Family. Close friends. David and Rachel attended. Sat near the back. Listened to stories about a woman who'd been vibrant, creative, loved. Her daughter spoke. 10 years old, brave beyond measure, reading a poem she'd written about her mother. David cried, silently, for the woman he'd been married to, for the girl losing her mother too soon, for the fundamental unfairness of it all. After, they went to the reception, spoke briefly with Thomas, with Jessica's family, then left. At home, Rachel held him while he processed, not grief exactly, but something close, loss, recognition of time passing, of how fragile everything was. "Are you okay?" Rachel asked. "I don't know. It's complicated." It can be complicated. I didn't love her anymore. Not in that way. But I cared about her. And seeing her like that, knowing she's gone, it's strange. You have permission to feel however you feel. He nodded. They sat together, processing, being present with the complexity of it. Days later, life resumed. Work continued. Rachel's career progressed. The world moved forward because it always did. But David carried Jessica's words with him, her fear, her gratitude, her request that he stay happy, stay present, not lose what he had. He wouldn't. He'd learned that lesson too well, paid for it too dearly. But the reminder was good, necessary. Every few weeks he checked in with Thomas. How was he holding up? How was his daughter doing? Did they need anything? Thomas always said they were managing. Getting through it, taking it day by day. "You don't have to keep checking on us," Thomas said during one call. "I know, but I want to." "Why?" "Because Jessica would want me to, and because it's the right thing to do." Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then, "Thank you. Really, it means a lot." David continued checking in, not intrusively, just enough to let Thomas know someone was there, someone who understood, at least partially, what he'd lost. Rachel never questioned it, never felt threatened. She understood that love didn't always end cleanly, that caring about someone could persist even after romance died. "You're a good man," she told him one evening. "I'm trying to be." "You're succeeding." He pulled her close, grateful, for her understanding, for her presence, for her unwavering support through all of it. Life continued. Years passed. Jessica became a memory, important, formative, but no longer painful. David kept his promise. He stayed present, stayed balanced, didn't let work consume him, built a life that mattered, with someone who mattered in ways that actually counted. And whenever he felt himself slipping, working too late, prioritizing the wrong things, he remembered Jessica's hospital room, her fear, her gratitude, her reminder that time was finite and presence was everything. It kept him grounded, kept him focused on what actually mattered, not revenue, not growth, not empire building, but this, being here, being present, being connected, with Rachel, with life, with every ordinary, extraordinary moment. That was success. That was achievement. That was everything that actually counted. And he never forgot it again. 20 years after that lunch hour that changed everything, David stood in his company's new headquarters. 50 floors, glass and steel, state-of-the-art, a monument to success, to growth, to everything he'd built. His company now employed over 2,000 people, offices in 6 countries, revenue in the hundreds of millions, an industry leader. He'd done it, achieved everything he'd set out to achieve. But standing there, looking out at the city from his corner office, He felt none of the satisfaction he'd expected. The work was fine. The company was successful. His wealth had grown exponentially, but it was just work, just money, just achievement. What mattered was waiting for him at home. Rachel, their life together, the ordinary moments that added up to extraordinary connection. He checked his watch. 5:30. Time to go home. His secretary appeared at the door. Leaving early? On time, actually. Right, of course. She smiled. See you tomorrow. He drove home through rush hour traffic. His phone buzzed with notifications, emails, messages, things that needed attention. He ignored them. They could wait. At home, Rachel was in the kitchen, cooking, music playing. She turned when she heard him. You're home. I am. Good. I'm trying a new recipe. Hope you're hungry. Starving. They ate dinner together, talked about their days, made plans for the weekend. The conversation flowed easily, comfortably, the way it had for 20 years. After dinner, they cleaned up together, then settled on the couch. Rachel reading, David with his laptop open, but mostly just sitting beside her. What are you thinking about? She asked. About time, about how fast it goes. Feeling old? Feeling grateful. She set her book down. For what? For this. For you. For not making the same mistakes twice. You earned this. The life we have. You fought for it. We fought for it. True. She leaned against him. He wrapped his arm around her. They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. But inside, here, everything was still. Perfect. Complete. David thought about the man he'd been. The one who came home at lunchtime and found betrayal. Who lost everything. Who rebuilt from nothing. That man had learned. Slowly. Painfully. But completely. And this man, the one sitting here now, lived those lessons every single day. Not perfectly. He still worked too hard sometimes. Still got caught up in business stress. Still had to remind himself to be present. But he did remind himself, every day, every moment, because he'd learned what happened when you forgot, when you prioritized the wrong things, when you measured success in everything except what actually mattered. He'd learned it the hard way, the expensive way, the way that cost him a marriage and nearly cost him himself. But he'd learned it. And now he had this evening, this woman, this life. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't cinematic, wasn't the kind of success that made headlines, but it was real, deep, true, and that was everything. Rachel stirred. I'm tired. Coming to bed? Yeah. They went upstairs, got ready for bed in their familiar routine, brushed teeth, set alarms, the ordinary rituals of shared life. In bed, Rachel curled against him. Her breathing slowed, deepened. Sleep taking her. David lay awake a while longer, thinking, processing. 20 years since that Wednesday, since the watch on the nightstand, since his life irrevocably changed. 20 years of rebuilding, learning, growing. 20 years of making different choices, better choices. And here he was, successful in ways that actually mattered, wealthy in ways that couldn't be quantified. He had work he cared about but didn't consume him. He had wealth that provided security without defining him. He had a partner who saw him clearly and loved what she saw. He had presence, connection, real life, being lived intentionally. He'd built an empire, but he'd also built this. And this was what actually mattered. The empire would continue after he was gone. Someone else would take over, lead it forward, build it bigger. But this life, this connection, this love, this was his, uniquely, completely his, and it was everything. Rachel shifted in her sleep, murmured something incoherent. David kissed her forehead, settled deeper into the pillows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to choose presence over absence. But tomorrow was tomorrow. Tonight was now, and now was perfect. He closed his eyes. Let sleep come. Let the day end. Grateful, content, complete. Not because he'd achieved something, but because he was here, fully here, present in his own life. And that was the real success, the only success that mattered, the success he'd paid dearly to understand and would never take for granted again. David woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. He went downstairs. Rachel was on the balcony. Still in her robe, looking at the city. He poured 2 cups, brought them outside, handed her one. "Thank you," she said. They stood together, watching the morning unfold, the city waking up, traffic building, life beginning again. "Beautiful day," Rachel said. "It is. What do you want to do with it?" He thought about his schedule. Meetings, calls, the endless demands of running a company. "Clear my afternoon. Spend it with you." "Really? Really?" She smiled, kissed him. "I'd like that." "Me too." And he meant it, completely, without reservation, because he'd learned, finally, deeply, permanently, that this morning, this coffee, this woman, this ordinary moment of standing together watching the city wake up, this was success. This was achievement. This was everything that actually mattered. And nothing else came close. If you're still here, if you walked those 14 stairs with David from that devastating Wednesday afternoon to the sunrise morning where he finally understood what matters, then you know this wasn't just entertainment. This was a mirror. And somewhere in David's journey from empire builder to empty house to genuine connection, you saw something that resonated. Maybe you saw the version of yourself that works late every night, telling yourself it's for your family while they slowly become strangers. Maybe you recognize the moment when achievement stopped feeling like enough. Maybe you're standing at your own crossroads right now, wondering if you're building something meaningful or just building. Here's why I'm asking you to subscribe, like, and comment, and I'm going to be honest about each one. Hit that subscribe button. Because this channel is committed to stories that don't just pass time, they challenge how you spend it. Every video here asks the hard questions. What are you sacrificing? What are you building? Who's waiting for you to come home? Really come home, not just physically but emotionally. When you subscribe, you're telling the algorithm that depth matters, that we need more content that makes us examine our choices, not just escape them. You're voting for substance. And honestly, we need more people voting for substance. David lost 11 years learning what you might learn in the next story. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Like this video. Because that simple click does something powerful. It helps this story reach someone who needs it right now. Someone standing at the bottom of their own stairs. Someone who just found their own unlocked door. Someone who's working 80-hour weeks and can't remember the last real conversation they had with their spouse. Your like isn't just appreciation, it's amplification. It's you saying, "This message matters." More people need to hear this, and they do. Because for every David who learns after losing everything, there could be 10 who learn before the crash. Your like could be the reason this appears in someone's feed at exactly the moment they need to hear it. Comment below with your truth. Tell me, what resonated with you? Are you more like David, building empires but missing life? Or Jessica, slowly disappearing while someone claims to love you? Or Rachel, choosing someone who finally learned to be present? Have you had your own Wednesday afternoon moment, your own devastating clarity? Or are you working to avoid one? More importantly, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Because here's what I've learned. This story about presence, about being here now, about not sacrificing connection for achievement, it translates across every culture, every country, every time zone. Someone in Tokyo is watching this at 3 a.m., examining their choices. Someone in London is watching during their lunch break, wondering if they should go home early today. Someone in New York is watching this instead of answering one more email. Your comment creates community. It reminds us we're all wrestling with the same questions about what matters, what's worth it, what we're willing to lose in pursuit of winning. And here's the real reason I'm asking. Stories like this take time to craft. Hours of writing, refining, ensuring every moment lands with truth rather than manipulation. This isn't content farmed for clicks. It's crafted for impact. When you subscribe, like, and comment, you're not just supporting a channel. You're supporting the belief that storytelling still matters, that depth still has value, that we can create content that makes people think differently about their lives, not just consume and scroll. David spent 11 years and half his fortune learning that presence matters more than profit, that you can win at business and lose at life, that the real measure of success isn't your bank account, it's whether someone's face lights up when you come home. You just learned it in the time it took to watch this video. That's the power of story. That's why your support matters. So here's what I'm asking. If this story made you think about your own life, subscribe. If you want this message to reach someone else who needs it, like. If you have thoughts, questions, or your own story to share, comment. And if you know someone who's working too hard, achieving too much, and missing too much, someone who needs to hear that coming home early isn't just about time, it's about presence. Share this video with them because maybe, just maybe, they'll watch this and make a different choice than David had to make. Maybe they'll choose presence before betrayal forces them to. Maybe they'll learn the lesson before paying the price. That's why this matters. That's why your engagement matters. That's why I'm asking. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for being present, right now, in this moment. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to close this laptop and go be present somewhere that matters. I hope you'll do the same. But first, subscribe, like, comment, then go be present in your own life. I'll see you in the next story.